is Carin Björngren Cuadra. She's an assistant professor in social work at the Department of Social Work in Malmö University. Her interests have mainly involved migration and health, with an interest for the human services responses to diversity, underpinned by an interest for distribution of security, welfare, and risk. So currently she is involved in research within the role of social work in disaster management and the Swedish contingency system. So please.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And thank you, Maria. So now I'm so happy I have a manuscript to stick to, because it was so interesting to listen to Finland. And I really wish we had that study as you have. I will have a little bit more of a top-down perspective. And okay, let's start. Okay, do you see the old man or the lady perhaps contemplating over aspects of everyday life? Because this is an illustration of my experience when approaching our topic, social services in times of disasters, and the role of public social services in municipalities in Sweden. It's not without reflection I have chosen this ambiguous picture. Actually, I looked at the one you had, the two faces and the vase, or the duck and the rabbit, is it? But as we have to do with two traditionally very gendered areas, social work and security, I thought this might do, only actually to demonstrate the ambiguity. And as you said, you can look at facts in different ways. That is a little bit puzzling. When I say gendered, I mean that norms of masculinity and femininity is intertwined in the understanding of and functioning of those areas, social work and security. I think that gender dimension would be very, very interesting, but that's another story, another project. This is the outline of today. I want to give you a hint of the context, because I think we need the context to understand what social services in times of disaster in Sweden can be, the role of social services. When we discuss those unexpected high consequence events like disasters, crisis, emergency, major accidents or whatever. I will thus outline the contingency system seen from the perspective of social services, and also at least touch upon some challenges. And I could just as well give you my main points already now, because there is no clear picture. Anyway, I don't have it. And that is why I think this Nordic Welfare Watch is so terribly interesting. And I wish we could do this study as you did. So I will give you my observations and interpretations, and let's start. So now, please don't despair. I will walk you through this terrible chart. How do you get this red one? Is it like this? No? You will find your way anyway. It is an overview of the administrative base, actors and organizations, and of course there's no single agency with a sole responsibility. Like in most countries, we have those three levels. And the social work, how do you go? And the social work, is it this one? Well, how do you get it red? How do you make it, where do you go?
The red one is this
one. That one. Then I shall, yeah. This here you find social work. So I will walk through the system, and here is where the action is, social services, the public social services as an organization. The system has, as in many countries, an historical connection to the military organization, the army. However, in October last year, security moved to the Ministry of Justice, where we find the Minister of Home Affairs. You have him up there. This is quite like Finland, anyway, I think so, Minister of Internal Affairs. Up until last October, it was under the Ministry of Defense, as in Denmark, Iceland and Norway, right? To what extent this is reflecting a strengthening of civil perspective in Sweden at the expense of the military, I do not dare to say. It might as well only reflect a restructuring of the relationship, as well as the relationship between individuals, the individual and the state. Anyway, there is an ongoing process as regard to strengthen the civil protection, as well as to target the individual, the private, and his or her responsibility in terms of self-preparedness. That aspect, I think, is identified as a major challenge in Sweden. You know, how to get people to be prepared and develop a safety culture. And such challenges bear upon social work, so I will return to that. The shift of ministry is part of this long process, as I think you are familiar with, after the Cold War, and the emphasis on threats that then was understood in terms of invasion and war. Now the idea has shifted, as in the Nordres, to the broader interpretation of what security is all about. If security was before a matter of territorial security, it's now understood as a societal security. So we have this a whole of society approach since 2009, involving to safeguard the critical function of society, protecting people and upholding fundamental values like democracy and human rights. Threats are now to be understood as emerging from intricate interferences in society, intricate interdependencies, most often due to technical devices. Anyway, dependencies has changed focus to the importance to uphold critical functions in society, and social services is one of those identified critical functions of society. The body responsible for coordinating all this is Swedish Civil Contingency Agency, MSB, we say. Their assignment is to build resilience across sectors and levels of government. All three levels, they run through all three levels. And actually they are paying the project I'm working with at local level. It is also important that you see that the coordination implies the entire spectrum of threats or hazards and risks to society, from everyday accidents to major disasters or those crises, and at all levels of society, and also to address them before, during, and after the occurrence of those events. The approach is called All Hazard Plus, to highlight that all kinds of hazards are included, and the plus underline that one size of preparedness does not fit all hazards. That is, there is a need to unique forms of prevention as well. Speaking about hazards, social risks is a strong topic over the last years in terms of social unrest and antagonistic scenarios. Okay, let's go. I just want to draw your attention here also to this secretary up here, because that was a lesson learned after the tsunami. Now we have this secretariat, where is it? Here, working 24/7 at the national level. I also, before we leave this, that you see this one, the board, the National Board of Health and Welfare, and they own my project, sort of, under the social ministry, as they are very relevant for the social services, as they work under an ordinance on crisis preparedness, and they shall coordinate, support, supervise social services planning and preparedness, as well as for themselves make risk and vulnerability plans. And then also you need to see those county councils working with healthcare and some regional development and so on. We leave them aside because we have to stick to social work. Okay, to sum up, we have this whole of society approach then, and involving to safeguard critical functions of society. And the objective is to prevent, respond, and recover before, during, and after, as we used to say. And we also have this all hazard plus. Then I actually want to add those three principles. They are quite important because they run through the system and sort of organize the levels. Because it's said that the responsibility means that involves that agents responsible for an activity under normal conditions maintain their responsibility during the emergency. It rings a bell here for for social services, doesn't it? What they do normally, they shall do under the emergency. There is a kind of subsidiarity principle between the levels. When a lower level is overwhelmed, the next level has to stop in. So if a municipality is overwhelmed, or 2, 3, they are overwhelmed, next level can step in. We have the similarity, which aims at the same organization during emergency as under normal conditions. We shall have the same organization then, and then the proximity, which appraises handling of emergencies at lowest possible level in terms of structure. So this really bears upon social services, doesn't it? What they do normally, they are supposed to uphold, and needless to say, because they are really low, at low level structurally, and they are very near where the action is. Just as Maria mentioned, we have this, the regional level, this organization. You see, this is Sweden, and you see here the counties and the county administrative board at the regional level. Just a quick glance, because they're relevant for social work. Those areas. This is the areas then for the county administrative boards. They are the government authorities at regional level, and they are quite important then, as they support the municipalities. Key aspects about them. The county administrative boards are responsible for coordinating civil emergency planning activities such as exercises, and just as well as in Finland, they can organize exercises and seminars inviting the municipalities. They are doing risk and vulnerability analysis every year and act as clearinghouses between public and private partners within their geographical area, within their blue area. They shall have contingency plans for their region, and they shall also report all the contingency plans from all municipalities within the area and send them upwards in the system. I think we can. Okay. This is pretty much a mirror at local level. Just some key points. The municipalities also shall conduct risk and vulnerability analysis. They shall have contingency plans in place and be prepared, and they are responsible for their geographic area. They shall coordinate agents at the area, both private and public. And they shall educate and have exercises for their staff and the politicians, and report upwards then to the county administrative board. Now we are approaching social services a little bit more. If we look at society from the municipality's perspective, their assignment is to build the society. We see this is a municipality. They have a range of responsibility under the Act of Municipalities. Just some examples, you all know them. It's childcare, schools and libraries and water sanitation, street cleaning, land use planning. So, however, they also work under this Act, Civil Protection Act. They work with accidents and preventing accidents in accordance with this Act. The responsibility for safety under the Civil Protection Act involves the rescue services, what was called fire brigade. But they do a lot more than to extinguish fire, and they are very central when it comes to as responders to the disasters. However, then those high consequence incidents, they apply to this act on extraordinary incidents, the major misfortunes. So, the legal framework from the municipality's point of view has two intertwined strands. One for accidents, both in everyday, elder people falling in their homes, and one for security. So we have safety and security. The Social Services Act, you see, like here, that governs the social services. And other legislation governing the public social services, targeting substance abuse or disability, those legislation does not address specifically the responsibility in case of crisis and serious events, as I heard you have, this emergency social work. Rather, according to the principle of similarity, the responsibility under the Social Services Act applies also in the context of crisis. The responsibility, or this responsibility, encompasses the entire population as well as certain areas, like for care for persons with disability or elderly individuals and families. And each municipality has within their area the ultimate responsibility, quite important, the ultimate responsibility for that individuals get the support and help they need. And in addition, the responsibility for individuals residing in the municipality, just hanging around, a tourist or an undocumented migrant, for instance. The responsibility includes both structurally oriented ventures as well as services. The structurally oriented involve being well informed regarding the entire population's living condition and being an active part in planning of society. Services, on the other hand, are either general, like counselling, for instance, or individual, directed to individuals, like child protection or safety alarm for elderly. So then, this is the red top then, just to show you that at the red top of the triangle, all three levels of society meet, in terms of legislation anyway. We have the instruction for MSB, those who are coordinating the whole system. The governmental authorities are addressed by this ordinance, crisis preparedness, here for so the boards and the county administrative boards. And then we have this law, and I'm not kidding, this is the name. The important word is extraordinary incidents, addressing the municipalities. So, the role of social services then, what about that? As I said, I think it's an ambiguous picture to what, and not very clear. I mean, of the enacted, taken role, I mean, in action. To my understanding, are social services involved to a very different extent in the risk and vulnerabilities analysis that the municipalities are obliged to do to underpin their contingency plans and preparations for emergencies and crises. Some social services are actively involved, while others seem to be excluded or withdrawn. I don't know which. In some municipalities are elaborated plans for continuity in services in place at many organizational levels, like you said, as well as plans how to respond to further needs in case of crisis. They are also given, the municipalities are also given the responsibility for providing psychosocial support in case of crisis, most often organized in cooperation with NGOs and religious communities. Also, this service is intertwined with everyday accidents. It is the same team, group of persons, given support in times of disasters than when, let's say, a client has committed suicide. My interpretation is that the responsibility for psychosocial support goes very well in hand with the tradition of social work that is strongest in Sweden, namely the case management tradition, a social worker sitting at a desk, sort of, meeting one client at a hand, or perhaps a family. The alternative, the more structurally and community-oriented tradition, is not performed under the label social work and not by social services. However, as I said, do the social services responsibility encompass a structurally oriented venture as well in terms of being well informed regarding the entire population's living condition and being an active part in planning of society. So, to my understanding, can that be interpreted as a fairly active role in relation to crisis, both before, during and after? So there are incentives to step forward and articulate social services perspectives more strongly. I find that particularly interesting given the prominent challenges coming from that much care today is performed by a vast numbers of providers, as well as the deinstitutionalization over the last decades. Individuals who used to live in institutions are now living at home, however, most often totally dependent on both social and technical support. This is a prominent aspect of the intricate interdependencies in modern society. Taken together is the role of social services role of social services in progress, I think. It's an evolving area, or work in progress. And as I said, I don't think there is an overview. Social services is at the agenda in a way. For example, SALAR, the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, the Board of Health and Welfare, and who also, by the way, recently got an assignment involving this topic by the Social Ministry. As I said, have MSB identified the individual's responsibility as a major challenge, how to address and develop this responsibility. And I think it is called upon for social services to be active in this exploration. Social services has a lot of knowledge as regards circumstances and conditions under which responsibility for yourself is impaired and support is needed, even in your daily life and under normal circumstances. That is what social services is all about. MSB has also identified children and elderly as exposed and vulnerable, and I think that, so to speak, operationalize this as well as nuance this picture and add some dimensions. Social services need to be very much involved in this venture. This is to say, the contingency system needs strong input from social services to understand and analyze human conditions. Social services could bring in different intersectional perspectives that are just as interesting as age and gender, such as disability and ability and class and ethnicity and so. So social services can contribute more strongly, to develop crisis preparedness, grounded in social reality. And now to reality then, to close up. You need some reality. I want to give you two examples. This last summer we had a big bushfire or forest fire. Just to show you, you can see here at least two of the municipalities, but there are more around here, and villages affected. The biggest fire, was it ever, or more or less ever? Anyway, terribly big. So this was really an unexpected high consequence event. So then you can imagine that the social services are then supposed to uphold what they are normally doing, meaning, for instance, giving elderly care for people living in this area. So they did. However, they also had to engage themselves in assisting with evacuation, and anyway plan for evacuation for some institution. I don't think there was an evacuation from an institution, but they had to really be aware because they really didn't know what way this terrible fire could go. So that was one example, and anyway, just as I have time, I can say there has been evaluations on this, but the role of social services wasn't that involved in this investigation. As I would have been interested to know what did they do more in detail. We have here also another one. This was a storm in the end of the 90s, I think. Cuadra, she was called. Anyway, just so you can see that there have been some these kinds of situations, and yeah, then you can imagine without roads, electricity, heat and water in the middle of the winter actually, you also had to uphold the services. And in this case there are some evaluations regarding the support and how the support could be, was affected for people, and to what extent the storm affected the capacity to provide, for instance, elder care and other types of support during this emergency. And as far as I know, there was many lessons to be learned, that the preparedness, this is more than 10 years ago now, but anyway, the preparedness wasn't really sharp. And that is also what I'm crossing upon in the project that I will present a little bit more this afternoon, that there might be plans, but not always so updated. I think I'll stop there. So, thank you.